Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Kata Podgorski. I work for the Connecticut Department of Transportation in the Traffic Signals Unit, and I am the project manager for state project number 174-481, traffic control signal replacements in Northwest Connecticut. You may hear me slip up and refer to this project as District 4. District 4 is the more technical delineation for Northwest Connecticut. So in case you hear me say that, they're the same region that I'm talking about. I just want to draw your attention to the email where you can reach us to at any time really during the project life cycle, but during this meeting or within the next 2-week comment period. Our email here is at the bottom. You'll see it again a couple more times throughout the presentation, but it's the first mention. So if we could have the next slide, please. So before we get started into the details of the project, we have a few housekeeping items. So this first thing is how to view captions and subtitles in Zoom. You should have an icon at the bottom of your Zoom window that says show captions, as kind of shown on the screenshot there. If you click that, you should be able to select any number of languages, and then you'll be able to see closed captioning throughout the presentation. This should be available on YouTube too, on the recording that's archived later. So just to give a quick meeting overview, we've started the housekeeping. We have a few more housekeeping items, and then I will introduce the project team. I will talk a little bit about the purpose of the meeting and an overview of the project and these types of signal replacement projects. We'll talk about some of the project coordination that's been started and that's planned to take place during the rest of the project life cycle. We'll talk a little bit about potential right-of-way impacts and then the process for acquiring right-of-way if needed for the project. And then we'll talk a little bit about project cost and schedule and the next steps. And then at the end, we'll have our question and answer session where we can kind of interact back and forth if anybody has any questions or comments. So there's a couple different ways you can reach us during the question and answer session. I already mentioned the email. Here it is again, and it's, I'll just say it in case anybody's audio only here. It's DOT signal replacements at ct.gov. There's a voicemail box that you can leave messages for us. We're actually not able to access the voicemail box live during the meeting, but if you leave a voicemail there, we'll be checking it within the 2-week comment period. So you're welcome to do that. Or you can use the Zoom Q&A feature. And then I'm also going to point out that we have a project webpage. Here's the site. You could also just Google state projects, CONDOT 174-481, and you should be able to get to it and access various informations about the project. The comment period after this public meeting is open through January 6th, 2026. So to use the Zoom Q&A function, you should have an icon within your Zoom window that's like shown in the screenshot that says Q&A. And if you click that, the window should pop open, and then you can just type your question in the box and click enter, and we'll be able to see it and respond to it. And if you're an audio-only participant, you can dial *9 to raise and lower your hand. We'll be able to see that in Zoom, and we can unmute you. So this slide is a Civil Rights Title 6 slide. It says that we have no person shall on the basis of race, color, or national origin be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We have a post-meeting survey that can be found at the link shown on the slide, and we appreciate any feedback that we receive on how we can improve these meetings for public involvement. And additional civil rights information is also available using the link for our Title VI website. So this slide is the Title VI notice to the public that says any person who believes she or he has been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. For more information on CONDOT Civil Rights Program and the procedures to file the complaint, you can contact CONDOT Title VI Coordinator at 860-594-2169, TRS 711, or email deborah.goss@ct.gov. This next slide is the Title VI notice that's posted in Spanish, so I'll just give a minute to allow people the chance to read this. Okay. So now let me jump into a little bit more project related stuff and introduce the project team. So Matt Bloom is our Division Chief of Traffic Engineering here at the DOT, and Lisa Conroy is the Principal Engineer in the Traffic Signals Unit. Again, my name is Kata Podgorski. I'm the Project Manager for this project. Daniel Veronesi, you'll be hearing from, he's the Project Engineer. And Leonardo Gomez and Fred Orley are other transportation engineers working on the project who may also be participating in this presentation. And Jack Carlson is our representative joining us from the right-of-way group here. So he'll be sharing some information as well. And the purpose of this meeting is, first, I want to provide a little introduction to kind of an ongoing program that we have here at the DOT to replace outdated traffic signal equipment. So first we're going to go over that, and then we're going to provide a little bit more project-specific information and overview and the status of what's going on with the project. And then we're looking to obtain input and respond to questions and comments. So for this District 4 or Northwestern Region traffic signal replacement projects, we have plans to replace 11 traffic signals, full replacements. One location is in Ansonia, one is in Burlington, one in East Granby, two in Granby, one in Suffield, one in Torrington, two in Watertown, and two in Winchester. So you can get kind of a high level of where these locations are, but we're going to be zooming in and looking in more detail at each of these locations as we progress through the presentation. So I just want to give you a little bit of an overview so that there's a better understanding of what this project is all about. This is what we call a district various project. The state owns and maintains 2,800 traffic signals that are located along our state highway system that we're responsible for operating and maintaining. And our goal is to keep them in good working order. So to do this, we have inventoried all of our traffic signal equipment and inspected all of our support structures. And signals are categorized as being in good, fair, or poor condition based on a number of factors and calculations. So some of the factors that are considered are age or a structure rating, which is an indication of how the condition of the structure, like the mast arm or the span pole that's being used to support traffic signal heads. We also review information on maintenance calls to all of these locations, as well as input from our district maintenance staff and traffic engineering staff. We also look at the existing pedestrian treatments and the existing hardware and detection equipment to see maybe if they're a little bit outdated and could use an upgrade. So we use all of these factors to determine which intersections are in most need of traffic signal upgrades. So that's how these 11 traffic signals got scoped into this project. And so to follow on with that, the purpose and need for this project is to replace aging signal infrastructure with new signal equipment to achieve a state of good repair. We have a lot of different types of projects here that are initiated at the DOT through a lot of different ways, but it's really the state of the existing equipment that has kind of led to the initiation of these proposed improvements. So these improvements are going to include new traffic signal equipment, new pedestrian facility improvements that will be sort of context sensitive, potential installation of flashing yellow arrows for permitted left turn movements if the conditions are appropriate, new vehicle detection equipment at intersections, improved access to transit stops if they're close by, and potentially additional amenities, as well as illumination of crosswalks and bus stops that are along state roadways. As far as the traffic signal equipment, so Dan's going to show you in upcoming slides where all of these things are proposed to be placed at each intersection. But when he's talking about mast arms, you can see an image here of this this support structure that's holding up the traffic signal head. So that's a mast arm. And then the signal heads or signal indications are the red, yellow, and green indications that are kind of the whole reason for the traffic signal is getting those up in the air where people can see them. Vehicle detection equipment, which you'll see a little bit more of, controllers and cabinets. So you can see this open cabinet and all of the hardware that's included within it. All of those are getting replaced. Potentially emergency preemption equipment, which allows, it would be locally owned, maintained, operated by each town if they prefer to have it at these locations, but it would allow the traffic signal to be prioritizing movements of emergency vehicles, such as fire trucks. Also, there's the potential for the addition of communication equipment if there are a bunch of closely spaced intersections that need to communicate with each other and to move the traffic flow, then there's a possibility that would be installed as well. So just to dig a little bit more into pedestrian accommodations, since they can be some of the most visible improvements to people in the general public, we have a complete streets policy at the Connecticut Department of Transportation now, and so we're really looking to provide as many curb ramps and sidewalk connections and crosswalks as reasonably makes sense to kind of expand and connect elements of the existing pedestrian network. So to that end, you might be seeing more new curb ramps or replacement of existing curb ramps, as well as new or replaced crosswalks and sidewalk connections, particularly when it's fairly straightforward to make a connection to a sidewalk that's maybe a little bit down the street from an intersection. We would try to make those connections or connections to bus stops. You would see the addition of pedestrian signal heads with push buttons. So the countdown peds with the walker and the stop hand with the countdown. And then kind of a new element for traffic signals in Connecticut are blank out signs, which you can see in the video. It's an example of how it would work. They are intended to draw attention to the conflict between right turning vehicles and when they have concurrent pedestrian movements. So that's when they'll have the turning vehicle yield to ped sign, or they could have a no turn on red sign that that prohibits vehicles from turning right when a pedestrian has pushed the push button and called the phase to eliminate that conflict. So just a quick look at some of the vehicle detection equipment. The standard that we are using for stop bar detection is a 360-degree video camera. So you can see an example of what that looks like, kind of attached to the top of the mast arm here. It looks like kind of a bell. This is not a red light running camera. This is not a camera used for surveillance or anything like that. It's used to identify where vehicles are as they approach an intersection and where they are stopped or queued in a stop bar. And then it helps the signal be more efficient in which phases it calls. So it can skip phases where no cars are present, or it can call phases if a car is sitting on a side street or maybe in a left turn lane. And then down at the bottom is an example of, this is a radar detector, and it's used for higher speed approaches for vehicles kind of not at the stop bar, but further back on their approach to the intersection. And there's a potential to extend a phase if it senses that a vehicle is approaching. So that's what that equipment looks like and what it's doing. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and he's going to get into more specifics at the locations for this project.
Thanks, Kata. I'll from here on out, we'll be talking about the specific locations and what the proposed equipment we're considering at this time will be for that location. Next slide, please. So we'll start in alphabetical order. So Ansonia will be the first town we discuss. Just some context for everyone on these slides. We'll start off with the location and an overview of the aerial image and a select street view image. And then particularly on this slide on the left, you have our preferred plan, some nomenclature for these intersections. It's kind of hard to tell on the view, but there is a circle with a square in the middle of it. That would be the proposed mast arm foundation location. And then there's an orange line or orange or red line extending out over the roadway meant to indicate the direction and length of the mast arm. You have some triangle symbols there that are meant to denote where the traffic signal indication, the red, yellow, green, would be along that arm. And there's a line, a perpendicular line with another perpendicular line that's meant to be the location of our blank out signs. We're also using a line style with a circle through it, and that's meant to be the proposed crosswalks in the area. And if there's new sidewalk, we'll have kind of a sidewalk image drawn out on that corner and where the sidewalk might be connected. There's also some squares on these plans, and that's meant to show the location of the push button and the pedestrian indications. And the last portion of this would be the blue areas, and that's meant to denote a right-of-way easement that we're looking to obtain, whether permanent or temporary. And the temporary ones would be more for construction activities when the signal is actually being constructed. And rights to that would be relinquished upon completion of the project, which Jack will get more into later on in this presentation. So with that, I'll start in Ansonia and give you guys a preview of what we're considering out here. So this in Ansonia, this is the intersection of Route 115 at SR 853, which is a state road that's Division Street, and Route 243, also known as Elm Street. On the top, we'll start on the top right portion of the screen with a proposed 65-foot mast arm that's adjacent to the Shell station that's at this intersection. It would be just at the back of the sidewalk extending out over the roadway, and that's meant for the Route 243 westbound approach and the Route 115 southbound approach to the intersection. Moving across the street now on the bottom right again, or on the bottom right of this screen, we have a 40-foot mast arm. On this corner, there's an existing stone masonry wall, retaining wall, and then a concrete retaining wall adjacent to the sidewalk that's in kind of sad shape. We'll be looking to replace that concrete portion of the retaining wall. We don't want to touch the stone retaining wall. And just behind that would be the location of that 40-foot mast arm, which would have to be on private property in order to fit that in, given the right-of-way constraints. And that mast arm is extending out over Route 115, meant for Route 115 northbound traffic. Moving across the street is the last mast arm at this location, and that is on the bottom left portion of the screen, and that's meant for the Division Street approach to the intersection. One thing to point out here, we observed this when we visited the site back in December, and our district maintenance forces have also relayed this information to us. Division Street approaching the intersection, larger vehicles, tractor trailers have a very tough time making that right turn on the 115 southbound. So the current 115 approach to the intersection has a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right lane. We're looking to shift that left turn lane over and combine the through and the right into one lane. This is a preliminary sketch on this plan. It'll be more refined as we get additional data and correspond with the town. But that is one thing that we noticed, and we're going to try to address beyond just a signal equipment replacement at this location. And that's more so tractor trailers don't off track and potentially hit that house or hit another car as they're making that turn. And as far as pedestrian facilities at this location, there are two existing crosswalks on Division Street and crossing 115 that we'd be looking to maintain and shift slightly to meet better ADA standards. And we're also looking to expand two more crosswalks at this location to the let's call it the missing corner of this intersection, where there currently are no pedestrian facilities today. Next slide, please. The next intersection is in Burlington. This is Route 4, Spielman Highway at Canton Road, and Route 179, also Canton Road. This is adjacent to the Farmington Canal River, or the Farmington River multi-use trail. That would be just off the screen. Depending on which screen you're looking at, it's either in the woods over there or at the top portion of the plan view. So this is an intersection where there's a very heavy movement to stay on Route 4, which is either a right turn if you're coming down the hill from Burlington, or a left turn if you're coming from the Unionville area into the Collinsville area. So heavy left and right at this intersection. We're proposing two mast arms at this intersection. The first on the top portion of the screen there is a 40-foot mast arm extending out over the roadway, and that's for Route 4 and the Route 179 approach to the intersection. The second mast arm is another 40-foot mast arm, and that's oriented in a way to capture Route 4 coming down the hill from Burlington to this intersection. We still need to correspond with the town a little bit more about access, especially access to the trail and pedestrian facilities at this area. But as we currently have it shown right now, there are no proposed crosswalks at this intersection. Next slide, please. The next intersection is in East Granby. This is the intersection of Route 20 at Newgate Road and Holcomb Street. They're a larger intersection, and we're looking at 4 mast arms at this location. They're in very close proximity to the existing span poles that are out there today. So the first mast arm on the top left is a 40-foot mast arm. This is the side of the road that's there's a steep embankment down into some drainage area over there. We're looking to install that mast arm just behind the existing guide rail that's out there. and that would be for the Route 20 westbound approach to the intersection. Moving across the street to the top right portion of the plan, there's a 50-foot mast arm proposed, and that's for the Holcomb Street approach to the intersection. Down onto the other side of Route 20, we have two mast arms. The first on the bottom right is a 50-foot mast arm, and that's extending out over the roadway for Route 20 eastbound traffic. And the last on the bottom left is a 45-foot mast arm for the Newgate Road approach to the intersection. There is, as far as pedestrian facilities, there is a start of a multi-use trail along Route 20 here. We'd be looking to add in new sidewalk ramps to the bottom portion of the plan and across the Route 20 on the right side of that plan. While these crossings do exist there today, we'd be bringing them up to current standards with ADA compliant ramps and push buttons and the indications to do so. Next slide, please. Next intersection, moving down the road into Granby. This is Route 20 at Route 189 and the drive to the Granby Town Hall. Many approaches to this intersection with that island in the middle, which makes geometry a little more unique than a typical four approach intersection. This is adjacent to the cemetery, so we'll start off on that side of the plan. So on the top portion of the plan would be a 45-foot mast arm. That's adjacent to the existing mast arm that's there today. And that would be covering the Route 189. Really, that's the Route 20 eastbound approach, departing to Route 189. And that little internal island or internal intersection that's created, that would also be providing indications for that internal intersection. Moving down to that River Rock Island that's at this intersection, we'd have a 55-foot mast arm adjacent to the overhead utilities that are over there. That would be covering the Route 20 westbound traffic and the traffic egressing from the Granby Town Hall driveway. There's also, moving down to the bottom of the plan, there's a 50-foot mast arm, and that's for the Route 20 eastbound traffic to the intersection. And finally, there's a 35-foot mast arm for the 189 southbound approach to the intersection. As far as pedestrian facilities here, we'd be looking to maintain the existing crosswalks that are there today. They tie into the existing sidewalk network. The ramps are pretty new in this area, so we're going to have to make a further evaluation if they even need to be reconstructed to current ADA standards. But at least the push buttons and the indications will be replaced to keep everything in, as Kata said, a state of good working order. Next slide, please. This next intersection is also in Granby. This is the intersection of Route 10 and US 202 at Canton Road and the north driveway to the Stop and Shop. There are 4 mast arms proposed at this intersection. The first on the top left portion of the screen is a 45-foot mast arm, and that's extending out over the state highway for Route 10 and 202 northbound traffic. The second mast arm is a 40-foot mast arm that is for the Canton Road extension approach to the intersection. There is an existing Stop and Shop sign in this area, and we're looking to place this mast arm in such a way that does not conflict with that Stop and Shop sign. We want to be able to maintain visibility to that. There is so moving across the street, there's a 35-foot mast arm, and that's for the Route 10 and 202 southbound approach to the intersection. And the last mast arm here is a 35-foot mast arm, and that's for the Stop and Shop driveway. You'll notice a blue box here. I'll just point it out. That would be a temporary, or an example of a temporary construction easement on that property. We really just need that to allow the contractor to build and hook up the signal, and then once the project's over, we'd be relinquishing the right to that. So that's just an example for you of a temporary easement we're examining. As far as pedestrian facilities here, we'd be proposing 2 new crosswalks, one to cross Route 10 and 202 on the right portion of the screen, and another to cross the Stop and Shop driveway with appropriate or ADA compliant sidewalk ramps for that sidewalk approach, or that crosswalk also. Next slide, please. Moving on to Suffield, this is the intersection of Route 159 and Thrall Avenue. Similar to the Burlington intersection, this is a T intersection. There's only 3 approaches, and there's a heavy right and left turn movement at this intersection. We'd be proposing 2 mast arms at this location. The first on the bottom right portion is a 45-foot mast arm, and that's extending out over Route 159 and meant to cover both directions of Route 159. And the last mast arm is a 40-foot mast arm adjacent to that private driveway, which would be for the Thrall Avenue approach to the intersection. Pedestrian facilities here, we'd be proposing two new crosswalks, one crossing Thrall Avenue and the other on the left portion of the intersection. That's the State Highway Route 159 approach. That would involve all new pedestrian facilities with push buttons, indications, marked crosswalks, and sidewalk ramps, curb ramps, excuse me. Next intersection, please. Moving on to Torrington. This is the intersection of Route 202 and Route 183. This is up the hill near there's the Target, the Walmart, and the Home Depot up in this area. The first mast arm would be, I'll start on the top left portion of the screen, would be a 65-foot mast arm extending out over Route 202, and that's for the 202 westbound approach to the intersection. Across the street adjacent, I think that's the Taco Bell over there. That would be a 60-foot mast arm extending out over the roadway for Route 183 northbound traffic. Moving across the street is another 65-foot mast arm, and that's for the Route 202 eastbound traffic to this intersection. And the last mast arm would be on the bottom left portion, and that's a 45-foot mast arm, and that's for the Route 183 southbound traffic to this intersection. Preliminary discussions that we've had, the town of Torrington has some sidewalk plans for this area, and they actually just recently constructed sidewalk up until I think it's about 200 feet away from this intersection. We'd be looking to fill in that last gap of the sidewalk and tie that into the all new pedestrian facilities that would be proposed at this intersection. And that's the blue easement area you see on the left portion of that screen, since the right of way along that is not wide enough to accommodate a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Then also tying that back into pedestrian facilities here, 3 of the 4 intersections have marked crosswalks and tie into an existing sidewalk network. We'd be looking to add in one more approach to that intersection to complete the quadrangle, so to speak. And that would involve all new ADA compliant pedestrian facilities, push buttons, indications, and the crosswalks to complete that. Next slide, please. Moving on to Watertown. This is the intersection of Route 63 and Straits Turnpike and at Route 73 and the Walgreens driveway. On the top portion of the plan, we'd have a 65-foot mast arm, and that's extending out over the roadway to cover both approaches of Route 63 and Route 73. The second mast arm at this location would be a 45-foot mast arm, and that's meant to cover the Walgreens approach to this intersection. Pedestrian facilities, there's one existing marked crosswalk today. We'd be looking to maintain that and construct ADA compliant ramps, curb ramps for that. And there is on that's the west side of Route 63. There's another existing sidewalk over there. We'd be looking to fill in that last, it's about a 50-foot gap in the sidewalk. and then tie that into the pedestrian crossings at this intersection with 2 new marked crosswalks. There's a large blue area there on the Walgreens side. We'd be looking to, as we need signal equipment for that crossing. That's technically not the state's right of way, so we'd be looking to obtain an easement in order for those pedestrian facilities there. That's one of the more major ones. Next slide, please. Moving just up the road on Route 63, this is Route 63 at the Watertown Shopping Plaza and Lombard Commons. We'd be proposing 4 mast arms at this location. The first on the top left portion of the plan view would be, I think that's a 35-foot mast arm extending out over the roadway for Route 63 northbound traffic. Across the Watertown Shopping Plaza driveway would be a 55-foot mast arm, I believe that is, and that's extending out over the roadway for the Lombard Commons approach to the intersection. Across the street are 2 40-foot mast arms, one for the 63 southbound traffic and one for the Watertown Shopping Plaza traffic. Pedestrian facilities here, there's 2 existing marked crosswalks. We'd be looking to formalize the other 2 crosswalks at this intersection. And that's just given there's sidewalk on both sides of the road here. It seems to make sense to give pedestrians the ability to cross where they deem it would be the best place for them to cross. Similar to the Walgreens side or the Walgreens intersection, there's a large area where the crosswalks are on the top portion of that screen. You see the big blue area. We'd be looking to obtain an easement in order to place these structures and provide access to the pedestrian facilities. Next slide. Last town in our project is in Winchester. This is the intersection of Route 8 at Beach Street and Wallen Street. This is along the, I forget the name of the river over here, but there's that retaining wall on one side of the road that drops you down a significant distance to the river over there. So this is actually the lone intersection in this project where we're not using mast arms. We're looking to replicate the span wire that's out there today. That would be a tall span pole that has the wire strung across to it and would connect to a utility pole that's across the road. And the traffic signal indications would be hung from that span wire. So on the top portion of the screen, we have 1 span pole that's proposed. Yes, it is shown in the middle of the sidewalk. And with that, we'd be looking to reroute the sidewalk around that span pole. And that's more to avoid interference with existing overhead and underground utilities. So that span wire would extend across the street, and all the traffic signal indications for all the approaches would be hung off that span wire, and that would attach to the existing utility pole that's out there today. Pedestrian facilities, there are 2 marked crosswalks already. We'd be looking to add in a 3rd marked crosswalk, and that's shown on the left portion of the intersection, that proposed crossing. Next slide, please. The final intersection in our project is also in Winchester. This is Route 44 at Route 183 and Old New Hartford Road. This is adjacent to the Route 8 Expressway terminus. We have 4 mast arms proposed at this location. The first on the top left portion of the screen is a 45-foot mast arm extending out over the roadway. That's for the Route 44 westbound traffic. Moving across the street, there's a 35-foot mast arm on the top right portion of the plan view. That's for the Route 183 approach to the intersection. Moving across the street is I think that's a 55-foot mast arm, and that's for the Route 44 eastbound traffic. And the last mast arm is another 50-foot mast arm, and that's for the Old New Hartford Road approach to the intersection. Pedestrian facilities, there are two existing marked crosswalks today. We'd be looking to maintain those two existing marked crosswalks. Um, One of the corners takes you to very close to the Route 8 expressway portion where we don't want to encourage pedestrians, and there's no accommodations across the bridge for them to go to. So we're going to maintain the existing pedestrian facilities that are there today and upgrade the ramps and the signal equipment to be ADA compliant. And that would be the last intersection in this project. I'll turn it over to or Kata. Sorry, I'm going to turn it over to Kata to explain the project coordination.
Hi again. Yes. So we have gone through our preliminary designs, and one of our next steps is going to be to coordinate a little bit more directly with each of the municipalities in this project. We sent the initial project notification letters back in July of 2025. So folks at the towns should be aware that the project is happening, but now we're going to discuss a little bit more specifically what the proposed improvements are and to see if they have any inputs or preferences. Another one of our next steps is to initiate and proceed with utility coordination. So there's as even in the picture, there's some overhead utilities in a lot of cases that can conflict with potential mast arm or span wire installations. So there's overhead utilities we need to coordinate with, as well as underground utilities. We're just pretty much looking to avoid any underground utilities, but making sure we understand where they are or what special requirements there could be for them is important. So we do virtual meetings and we do field meetings, and sometimes the towns are kind of involved with some of these meetings as well. And then tonight is actually another part of our effort to kind of coordinate with the public and to get some feedback from other people, from other stakeholders throughout the state. So now I'm gonna transition you into a little talk from Jack, but so you saw some of the designs that we have proposed, and in some cases there's limited right of way, or there's equipment that needs a little bit extra space to be placed properly. So in some cases we do our best to avoid it, but in some cases easements are needed. The ones that you saw on those preliminary plans are just that, preliminary. We're going to be working with our right-of-way unit. They'll be coordinating with the survey department, as well as property owners, as well as our designers as we get further into the project life cycle to kind of finalize the locations. But Jack can give you an overview now of the right-of-way process that we follow.
Good evening. Thank you, Kata. My name is Jack Carlson. I'm a project coordinator with the Department's Division of Rights of Way. Our office is responsible for acquiring the property rights needed for the Department's transportation projects. So as mentioned in the presentation, this project will require the acquisition of property rights. So I'd like to give a brief overview of our acquisition process. However, before I begin, I'd like to just review what our office is, some of the different agents within our office, and the legislative functions that allow our office to work. So our office has multiple different types of agents. We have our administration agents, those are project coordinators such as myself. Typically, you may have an interaction with us at the beginning of an acquisition or during the construction process. We also have title searchers who are responsible for searching the land records to ensure that we have the proper correct property owner, as well as to ensure there are no legal hindrances to acquisition, such as a lien or something that may prohibit a friendly acquisition of the property rights. We have our licensed appraisers, depending on the nature of the impact. We may have the property rights may be appraised or may be valued by our acquisition agents, who are the next in line. Those are negotiators. Those are the folks you'll be interacting with. If you are an affected property owner, they will come out and visit the property, provide any additional details, explain the project. And then finally, we also have our title closing agents. And after The negotiation process is complete. The title closing agents are responsible for preparing the deeds as well as recording any necessary documentation on the land records. Additionally, any required property rights will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Section 13A 73 and 13A 98E, as well as the Federal Uniform Act. The specific right-of-way impacts are still being finalized and may change as the project design progresses. Next slide, please. So our right-of-way acquisition process begins once the project design has progressed to a development milestone and all the impacts have been determined. At this point, each affected property owner will receive from our office a formal letter of intent to acquire, what we informally call our initial letter, along with a property map that will depict the specific property rights being acquired as shown on the right side of the screen. Next, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights, which will be used to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer will be sent to the property owner in writing, and a right-of-way negotiation agent, acquisition agent, will be available to meet with the property owner to explain the project, go over the specific impacts to their property, and explain the department's offer. The property owner will then have a reasonable amount of time, typically 30 days, to consider the department's offer and enter into negotiations. When an agreement is reached, the department will then prepare all the necessary paperwork to record the deed and property map on the town land records. However, if an agreement is unable to be reached, in order to keep the project on schedule, the department will acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the department's initial offer. The affected property owner would then have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the department's offer was inadequate. Whether or not a property owner chooses to appeal, the money deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner at any time. It's important to note that the department only acquires property rights that are needed for the project. If there are any questions regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, I'm happy to answer them after the presentation. And with that, I'll hand it back to Kate. Thank you very much.
Hey, hi again. Just another quick slide to go over the project cost and design schedule for this project. So our funding is 100% through the state, and our project budget is currently $11.5 million. We've completed preliminary engineering. You're seeing some of the results of our preliminary design, which is still ongoing, about another month to go with that. And then we'll be moving into our final design with additional coordination that we talked about before, with our final design plans being completed January of 2027. And then with this schedule, we're planning to advertise to contractors in April of 2027, and then there would be various deadlines for them as they kind of get up and running, and then physical construction would be expected to start in the spring of 2028. And then beyond that, construction would be expected to take about 2 construction seasons, so wrap up in the fall of 2029. So with that, the next steps, as we've sort of alluded to, are to advance into final design, get some public feedback and see what we can incorporate, as well as work with the towns and continue progressing our traffic signal designs and adding more details to the plans and developing more detailed specifications and estimates, and then really getting more information on our right-of-way needs and working through that process that Jack explained, and utility coordination as well. So with that, we are ready for our live question and answer session. Of course, our comment period is open for 2 weeks after this meeting, so feel free to email our DOT signal replacements at ct.gov email address anytime during that 2-week period. You could leave a voicemail on this phone number, 860-594-2020. And if you have a question or comment within the next two weeks, somebody should get back to you. But just as a general note, you are always welcome to coordinate with your local traffic authority. Each town has a designated local traffic authority to kind of handle local issues and coordinate with the DOT. And they're very knowledgeable about local issues and how to address issues. So you can Google the CTDOT LTA list and you can find who the LTA is for your town. So they're a really good resource to check in with it if you have questions about either this project, but really any issue that you see in your town. They're a good resource. So now I think I'm going to hand it over to Fred, and he'll just kind of let us know what's going on with the questions.
Yep. Thank you, Kata. My name is Fred Orley. Just going to go over some of the questions that came in. But before we get to that, go ahead and if you have any questions, use the Q&A function in Zoom. As Kata mentioned, there will be a 2-week period after this meeting where you can continue to comment. You can reach out to us at our email, dotsignalreplacements@ct.gov, or by voicemail at 860-594-2020. Make sure, this is very important, that you mention the project number when you contact us for comment. That way it ends up in the right person's hand and we can get back to you in a hopefully timely fashion. I'm also going to go ahead and post a survey link right now into the chat. If everyone could go ahead and fill out that survey, that's very helpful for us. We have a team who goes over the survey answers so that we can continue making these public information meetings better for everyone in the future. So during the presentation, we did have one question come in from Scott Odell. He asked, with the Route 4 upgrades, is the state looking at either making independent through and left turn lanes going from Unionville to Burlington, or extending the time on the left turn green arrow? Currently, only 3 to 4 cars can get through before the left green arrow disappears. The answer to that is that part of the design process is to obtain current turning traffic volumes, to determine if the lane use is appropriate, and to evaluate if any changes are needed to how the traffic signal operates. This can include providing sufficient times for each phase of the traffic signal based on demand. The comments on this location will be taken into account as part of the above noted considerations as the design progresses. Widening the roadway to add a new lane would be beyond the scope of this project, but if feasible, restriping and/or modifying lane arrangements could be investigated if the operational analysis indicates it would be beneficial. We also just recently had one question come in, so Kata, it's directed to you. So I'll
Hi. I'll just jump on and respond without typing out. Yes, we've been going back and forth a little bit. You do not need to resend that email to our DOT signal replacements email. We have it. A lot of those items that you brought up, we were going to be coordinating with the town anyway, but we know that you're particularly interested in them, so we'll be sure to include you when we coordinate with your town's LTA.
All right, thank you, Kata. We had another question come in from Nancy Mullen. She says, I see an orange box on the southwest corner of the Route 4 Burlington intersection. Will that location, if that is a box, allow for farm vehicle passage beyond the structure, if it is in fact a structure? I can go ahead and direct that to Dan, if you want to answer that one.
Sure. So you're talking about the southwest corner. So yeah, that's the traffic signal cabinet. That's where we house all of our the computer components that control the signal. There's an existing one that's there today, so we'd be looking to replace that adjacent to it, and that's the approximate location of that traffic signal cabinet. As far as farm vehicle passage, I'm not quite sure what exactly you mean by that, whether it's like a mowing equipment, but yeah, that all I guess all the cabling for the traffic signal is underground. So it would be a very similar setup to what's there today, where there's the concrete pad, and then the gray cabinet, and then all the cabling that goes to the traffic signal is underground and out of sight.
And I just popped on again to add to what Dan was saying, that these symbols are actually a little bigger as they're depicted on this plan than they are in real life. So they're not exactly drawn to scale. It's not going to be as big relative to that surrounding area. So there probably will be a little bit more space behind the cabinet than it looks like there will be here. The actual size will be closer to the symbol for the existing box that's shown on the plan, if that helps you visualize it a little bit better.
Thank you, Kata and Dan. I'm going to go ahead and give some more time for questions to come in case anyone else is thinking of one. In the meantime, I'm going to check the email inbox to see if we have anything. We do not have anything in the email inbox. Just going to give some more time. Still nothing there. So I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone for coming to this Zoom meeting. And I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar here. Thank you, everyone.